as you well know, I sort of fell into homeschooling. I really went into it kicking and screaming. I did not want to be a homeschool mom. I could not understand why any woman in her right mind want to be locked up for 12 years in a row with her kids when a yellow bus come take them away for free. But I knew when the Lord was asking us to homeschool our kids. And it's a whole big, long story how the Lord brought us into it. But one of the very first things that happened within a year or so of us homeschooling is I was really lonely. We moved from Oregon, where my husband was working, to northern Washington State, about 5.5 hours north, so that he could become a pastor, a worship pastor up there. And there weren't very many people that I knew that were homeschooling. And the ones that I did know that were homeschooling, I mean, I honestly, Zan, I had to give my eye teeth. There was one mom, her name was Teresa, that homeschooled, and she'd been doing it for a long time before me. And her kids were probably junior high, high school. And I said, can I just come over and just watch you? Yeah. Can I just sit there and just see what you do? Because I felt like, yeah, I'm doing okay, but not great. And she said yes, but sort of reluctantly.
Yeah,
I think she said yes because I was a pastor's wife, not because she really wanted to do it. And at that point, the loneliness I felt just really intensified.
You know, I want to stop you there because this loneliness is real.
Yeah.
And when we started homeschooling, it wasn't much different. I mean, if you don't know people who are homeschooling, it doesn't matter if it's 1984 or in the 90s or if it's today. Yeah. And I just remember thinking, because of our struggles, and we talked about that, you know, we were threatened with jail. We had people in our neighborhood who quit letting their children play with our kids, and people at church that wouldn't talk to us, and relatives, you know, relatives. And it is lonely. I can remember I was reading through the book of Revelation, and you know, at the beginning, it talks about how John is in exile on the island of Patmos. Yep. And he, you know, and he, from that experience of exile, he gives the church maybe his greatest work ever, the book of Revelation, you know, of the revelation of Jesus. But I just remember thinking, I remember praying and crying over that passage. I said, Lord, I know John was an extrovert. He loved his people and he's in exile. And I said, remember me? I love my people too. And nobody will speak to me. Everybody hates me. And, you know, it was maybe the loneliest I have ever been in my life. So when you say you were lonely, I know there's still moms out there, you know, with everything that's available today in homeschooling that are lonely. And this is no joke. We don't, you know, I had no choice, but now there are choices today. You don't need to be lonely in your homeschooling. Okay, so I totally interrupted you, but that
no, it was good though, because I think moms need to hear that if you feel lonely, A, it's pretty normal, and a lot of us have been there. And B, get help. You don't need to stay in that.
That's right.
Place.
That's right.
And I think for me, you know, we had 3 children at the time, and I was lonely as a pastor's wife, and I was lonely as a mother because I had taken my kids out of school. And before that, I'd been really involved in the school. I was a graduate of a Christian school. And the very first thing we did when we had, you know, when our daughter became school age was to put her in the Christian school. Well, then we realized, okay, well, this is expensive. You can't be a pastor and put your kids in a Christian school, which is sad and ridiculous, but that's a whole other podcast. So I went down, I found a homeschool supply store. So we move up to Northern Washington. I'm relatively new in homeschooling, probably about 1.5 years, 2 years into it. And I hear about a homeschool supply store. I go down there. The women were, you know, they weren't unkind to me, but they also weren't welcoming. And I left that store with a couple of, you know, spelling workbooks and some things. And I sat in my car. I don't know, this is a core memory for me because I could cry thinking about it. I came out of the store. And I don't consider myself to be like, I mean, I'm not an introvert for sure, but I like my quiet also. But I'm telling you what, I walk out of that store, it's dark, it's raining. And I sat in the car and I just cried and cried and cried. And I thought, I can't do this by myself. I don't want to do this by myself. Here's my husband. I'm so jealous. He goes to work every day and he's talking to, you know, adults. He's talking to people, and I'm breaking up fights. And now I've taken on this responsibility of homeschooling. So now the kids are with me all day long. And I was really tired. I was sad. I was lonely. And I went to the pastor's wife there. and this is a whole other podcast too, which maybe this would be a good thing to talk about sometime too. But I went to the pastor's wife there, and I told her, I'm struggling. I feel like I'm at the jumping off place for depression. First thing she said was, well, put your kids in school like a normal person. And then she said, also, I don't want you talking about that with the women of the church. You're here to be an encouragement to them. You're not here for them to minister to you. And at that point, I knew if I can't find my people, I'm not going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'd heard about this idea of a homeschool cooperative, and kind of like you, I was like, what? Kind of a new idea.
Right.
And so I went to a little town about an hour and a half south of where we were, and I watched what they did, and I thought, well, shoot, I could do that. I could start that. I wonder if anybody else would be interested. Mm-hmm. So I came home, told all the kids, I have this idea. We could start a homeschool cooperative because dad's a pastor. They're not going to say no to a pastor's wife.
Right.
So my kids and I made these flyers. And it just said, we want to start a homeschool co-op. We're going to have an information meeting. Very simple flyer. We printed about 25 or 30 of them. And my kids and I went to every grocery store, every coffee shop. We put them up in Starbucks all over the place. And it just had the date and the time and said, show up and we're going to give you our idea. Well, Zan, I thought maybe 10 people would show up. And darned if 75 people didn't show up for that meeting.
Goodness gracious.
My husband was just floored. We had people going out and trying to get, chairs from the back of the storage room so that people would have a place to sit. And I knew in that moment I was onto something. And I knew that I wasn't the only homeschool mom that needed other moms.